Hey folks, it's Rising Nomad. Today I'm with Shaun and we're going to talk about Western moral values and how they interact with the cultures that digital nomads inhabit. Now, basically Shaun is an anthropologist in the University of Melbourne, doing a PhD on this stuff, studying a lot of the digital nomad stuff. We'll link his info in the description so you can see his papers and stuff like that. And I'm a businessman traveling around the world and musician traveling around the world and YouTuber traveling around the world talking about this movement. And it's very interesting. Apart from the economic stuff that we've talked about as well, there's also this sort of morality and values and just general daily habits and things that we bring with us when we come to a place like this, and which might differ from the order in largely more traditional societies that are acting as our hosts as digital nomads. So what are some examples of this that we can get into as a preview? I think like sort of like the level of nudity in public, for example, where it would be, like also environmental concerns that we might have, also sort of treatment of animals and just all that sort of stuff that a lot of us are shocked when we come to some of these countries to find, gender roles, for example, can be one. And the big question of this video is how much should we come and preach our moral values to the societies that we're inhabiting, and how much should we conform to their moral values? What do you think?
So I think, let's take nudity for example. So in Thailand, it's you're not meant to walk around with your shirt off. It's considered indecent.
For women, I see men do it on the island all the time.
Even for men, I don't think.
Okay, but I see it all the time.
Yeah, here in Koh Phangan.
Yeah.
In Chiang Mai, in Bangkok.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see it all the time. Maybe it would be regarded as more of a working class thing or something like that. But but definitely, let's focus on something that's definitely illegal here. Nude beaches.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, nude beaches are definitely illegal here. There's a couple on the island where people go to get naked and have a swim. They think it's super innocent because in Europe, countries like Croatia, Germany and stuff, it's super common. But here, sometimes the police will come and arrest people for this randomly. And, I have this mental image of a Thai police pickup truck driving onto the beach and a bunch of naked Western hippies running from them. Okay. Someone told me a story of this and I just can't get this mental image out of my head. And it's super funny. But what do you believe about this?
Yeah, so that's a different example. I think nudity, maybe if the beach is secluded, I think the point that I wanted to make about the shirts off is that you may want to take your shirt off, you feel more comfortable without your shirt on, and maybe some Thais don't mind either. But there are going to be some Thais that are maybe going to be a little bit offended by seeing that. You're coming into their space, like you're going into 7-Eleven here without a shirt. I don't think you're allowed to go into a 7-Eleven. I mean, let's not talk about no
shoes, no shirt, no service.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is, if we're a guest in a country, we really need to play by their rules and respect their rules. They have a whole cultural system of what's allowed, what's not allowed. They have a whole moral system, and we need to respect that. And just in the same way that we expect visitors to our country to play by our rules. Now, there was an interesting thing during COVID. I was in Chiang Mai and also in Koh Phangan, and this was during a time where the government said that you had to wear a mask when you were out in public. And it was so interesting in Chiang Mai, the only people that weren't wearing masks were foreigners. And so they weren't really kind of respecting the local law. And I just kind of think, I doubt that they would have also not respected the local law back where they were from. I'm pretty sure they probably would have worn a mask in Germany or Australia, wherever they're from. But it seems like once they come over to Thailand, it's almost like this sense of superiority where they don't feel like they need to play by their rules and they can kind of do whatever they want. And there's maybe some history to that. The whole imperialism, colonialism history that kind of Westerners feel superior to a lot of people around the world, and they kind of bring that attitude to them with them when they go traveling. So I think ultimately we are guests in the countries that we visit, and we need to play by the rules. And if we don't like it, then we could leave. Now, with the nudity in the beach, I think if you're in a secluded beach where no one's around, I think you could go and...
That's a tricky one, though, because in this country and a lot of other countries, the beach is actually public land. And while you can have a resort that's on the beach, you can't prohibit people from walking along the beach because it's public land. And that is very much the case here. If you notice, you'll always see the beach is open here, and then there's 3 to 5 meters behind that, it says private property. And so this is a very touchy issue. And I think, the way that I would sort of do it is like what they're doing now with marijuana smoke. If somebody complains, then the police will come and talk to you, and they have certain powers to even arrest you.
Yeah.
That's a little extreme. But I think rather than being moralistic and throw the law at it, stuff like that, it really needs to be calibrating on a certain person-to-person level, space-to-space level, and see who you're actually offending.
Yeah.
And that's why private businesses are I think, really key in this, and private spaces and stuff like that. It's like, if you want to run your business and have people wear masks because you're still afraid of COVID, you can do that still. And at the door you say, this is what it is. And I understand it's different in urban areas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But where you have public space, that's there's a lot more going on. But in rural areas, it tends to work like that. My establishment, my rules.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think with the nudity thing, as long as you're if you're not really offending anyone, so if you're out even if it's a public beach, but you're out somewhere and there's no one else around, I think, there's nothing wrong with maybe doing a little bit of skinny dipping.
Yeah.
But if you're offending people, if people are seeing you and you're still doing it, and you're kind of making other people feel uncomfortable, or you expect it, then you need to kind of not do it.
There's also a thing where people won't always speak up when you're offending them.
Yeah.
And you will get a pass because you're a foreigner, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there can be an absence of dialogue and indeed a communication language barrier between these sort of things where you wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
And it's all this stuff is really a good exercise of cross-cultural tolerance. But the tensions, if things are repressed, if things are not mentioned, it can very quickly bubble up into something that's a little bit,
yeah, well, there's resentment.
Yeah,
to start off with, and then it builds up,
yeah.
And then, it's I found it interesting, that the building that I was staying in, about the mask situation, the sign telling people to wear a mask was in English.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? It means that they're speaking to a particular group of people, English speakers. They're saying, hey, just reminding you when you're in this building to wear a mask. I don't think most of us liked wearing a mask. And so, for example, you have people that are just walking around without a mask, and people that are wearing a mask because they're trying to follow the rules and try to respect the community. That could also breed some resentment. Like, why do those people get to not wear a mask and I have to?
Yeah.
And as you said, like in a country like Thailand, they're probably not going to tell you because they don't want to be confrontational about it. But they're definitely probably sensing it and feeling a little bit kind of annoyed, I think.
And the other thing is stuff like religious stuff, like the wearing Buddha on a T-shirt, wearing Buddha as a tattoo on somebody. Like the local population might find that completely offensive, whereas in the mind of a foreigner, it's completely okay to have a Buddha T-shirt or a Buddha tattoo or something like that. But you see stuff around trying to educate for it is like, this is not okay under our religion. You cannot have this as a tattoo. It's similar to the way Islamic people don't like depictions of the Prophet Muhammad in art, especially in satire and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's two things. Like, if you know and you do it anyways, that's offensive. But if you don't know and you're doing it, that requires education. That requires an effort for locals 100%. To educate you on what you should or should not do in their country. And 100%. I feel that this is largely glossed over. This is a point that's largely sort of overlooked in the name of getting tourist money to come into a country. Yeah.
I think, this whole education point is so important. Like, I just, it's interesting here in Thailand, in Koh Phangan, and I think also in Chiang Mai, like a lot of the, it's funny, not funny, but a lot of the service workers here are from Burma.
Yeah.
And so, when, I've been for the last 3 months, just out of habit, saying Kop Kun Kap in Thai to these workers that I would just assume, I knew they were from Burma, but just I kind of, just assume that the person behind the counter can speak Thai or is Thai.
Yeah.
And then you realize a lot of these people are from Burma, from different parts of Burma that don't even speak Burmese. Like there's people from Karen State and Chin State. And it's that, I was so ignorant of the fact that these people serving me weren't even from Thailand.
Yeah.
And I was addressing them like they're Thai.
Yeah.
So we really need to kind of, I think, educate ourselves with what's happening here before we come into it, to kind of, in order to respect the culture, in order to play by the rules, we need to know what the rules are. So that requires a little bit of homework, I think. And that maybe is our duty as nomads. At the very least, okay, we don't maybe necessarily have to learn the local language. It would be great to learn a few phrases here and there, but at least do some preliminary research on the state of play there, the customs, the cultural kind of codes. And that's the minimum we can do for the benefit we get. It should be a fascination of
any traveler.
It should be.
It
should be.
Well, tens maybe different types of travelers, different stuff. But I think we're speaking to digital nomads who are very interested in learning about the local culture. The more, the better, and finding accurate resources to do that with. All right. So, but there's also stuff that. Examples of stuff where we feel we really know better, like burning trash. Like it's burning season in the north of Thailand and in Burma and stuff like that, and thus the digital nomad paradise, Chiang Mai, has a dangerous level of air pollution right now.
The most dangerous, I think, in the world at one point.
Yeah, it's really bad, and it essentially comes from people burning trash, people burning crops, people burning this, that, the other thing, and it's just a part of the culture. Has been for hundreds of years. I've seen a discussion yesterday that this has been going on for at least 10 years because records date back to at least 2013. It's been the same thing. It's not worse this year. It's something they've been doing for a long, long time. It's part of the culture. It's part of how they get rid of pest infestations, and it's in their crops. It's part of how they renew the soil. It's part of all that sort of stuff, but it's destroying the air, causing people to die, literally. And we feel that we know better than this. We feel we know better about the way that, for example, trash should be disposed of. Like some of the beaches can often just have trash and bottles washed up from the sea lying around, and how much should Western people come and moralize about this? Because studies have shown that people don't really care about the environment until they reach a certain level of affluence in their society, and then they start caring about sustainability and all that sort of stuff. So how much should we preach in this society, and what's the good way to contribute to this rather than the bad way of moralizing and preaching to them?
It's tough because it's a cultural practice that, as you said, they've been doing for many years, and it serves particular purposes, very useful purposes for them, for their lives. So killing all the pests or whatever, and getting the fields ready for a new season. But unfortunately it contributes to, let's say carbon emissions or the environment, and in a day-to-day sense, practical sense, kind of, very difficult kind of life in Chiang Mai at the moment with the smoky season. At the same time, like if air travel was considered a country, it would be the 7th biggest polluter in the world. Yeah. And nomads get around a lot, and tourists get around a lot with planes. Yeah. So we also, in order to kind of get to Thailand to maybe complain or to moralize, the locals, say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, we've actually burned a lot of fuel to kind of get there. So it seems a little bit, obviously we want to kind of make the world a better place and kind of reduce our impact on the environment. But we really need to look at ourselves in the mirror and what are we doing? We're also kind of, we have our own cultural practices that also pollute the environment, but we don't want to give them up. And a cultural practice may be tourism. Tourism is a cultural practice. So who are we to say, okay, you should, stop doing what you're doing, but we're going to continue doing what we're doing?
Yeah.
This is, I do think maybe there's a better way for Thai farmers to kind of achieve their ends without burning the fields and burning trash. But
yeah, they should just get Roundup from Monsanto, then the pest control, that's not good either, is it?
Yeah.
That's one of the most evil things to come out of the Western world is like these fertilizers that go into these third world places that don't have the health and safety regulations, and people just end up spending all days in the fields with these so they can make bananas that get sent all over the world to us, and that stuff is evil too. And it seems like a solution, but but at least the burning the crops is organic, right?
Yeah.
The traditional way. So it's hard to really grapple with these issues because they're so complex and they're so And I think that the solution is actually look at the community you're in, see how you can make it better. Look at the beach that you're on, and maybe organize a trash pickup and stuff like that. Look at the people around you, and maybe look at how you can reduce single-use plastics or whatever it is. None of us are the best at this, and some of us are more extreme, and some of us are more emotionally attached to the issue of reducing waste and stuff like that, and judgmental of others. But I feel that if everybody just tries a little bit to do this, the situation gets better, and just keeps these things in mind. But at the same time, you still also do have to realize that if you're living on a wage which is very close to the living wage, you can't blame people if this is not their main concern in life. If they're just surviving and living in their traditional society where, well, unfortunately, the practice still is to burn crops.
As you said, it's kind of it's almost like once we have all our basic needs met, then we kind of move on to the higher needs and the higher kind of issues like environmentalism. But for countries and for people that are just trying to survive or just trying to kind of create some kind of financial security for their family, oftentimes the dirtier way to dispose of trash is actually the cheaper, and that's why they're choosing it, because it's cheaper. It comes down to money, and if there were maybe other ways for them to dispose of it that didn't cost them as much money, maybe they would. But I think as well, maybe just setting an example, like go onto the beach, clean up the beach, set an example, locals can see you. I did that actually last time in Copenhagen, and these young kids started helping me. They just found it interesting that I was picking up rubbish, so they started helping me, and stuff like that I think is interesting.
And also the Western countries have a lot of the time, I've watched some videos about recycling and stuff like that, and it's not as happy as it looks. A lot of recycling gets sold off to another company. It's essentially just pushing the problem elsewhere.
Totally.
And a lot of recycling still ends up in landfills in countries like the Philippines. I like glass bottles, and I try to favor systems where I can, in Europe, for example, in Serbia where I live, I drink water at home exclusively out of glass bottles, and I return them to the store where I buy them, and they return it to the factory where it was made, so the glass bottles can be reused. Stuff like that can just make such a big difference. And guess what? It tastes better too. Glass bottles versus plastic bottles. And it just, stuff like that, and thinking locally in terms of stuff like that, and altering the supply chains so that they accommodate for things like that can be a really big thing. So that's really interesting. And the last thing I wanted to mention in this video and talk about is, what about this sort of stuff in the West which has become contemporary stuff about the patriarchy, the gender roles, all this sort of stuff, where in a lot of countries like this, I feel like they have a traditional society which largely resembles the same sort of patriarchy that we have come out of as a civilization for the past few thousand years. How much should we go into this country and criticize their family values, criticize their patriarchy if they're doing something that seems to work for them in terms of gender roles, in terms of the way power is controlled in the household and the way that roles are assigned and all that sort of stuff. How much should we criticize that?
These are all very interesting questions. I think it's, I think we need to understand the system here and to respect it. We may not have to agree with it, but yeah, I think we can maybe critique it, but with respect.
With respect, yeah.
With respect, and not trying to maybe impose your way of how societies should be organized upon another group of people.
Because we're only two or three generations out of this sort of gender rolled specific family comes first sort of structure of the family unit, and people are less happy. You know, the divorce rate is huge now since we, as a Western country, Western civilization, focus more towards individual sessions. You know, falling in love is the main thing. You need to be happy. If you're not happy, leave your significant other and find something that makes you happy and all this sort of stuff. That's one thing that happened. And then after that, there's like this whole thing about like, yeah, but who even cares about, you know, we need to ensure that there's, you know, that everybody feels that not only that they can be happy, but they need to be able to express themselves in a gender spectrum and with sexual orientation and stuff like that, and that becomes like a huge thing in society. Whereas, yeah, in traditional societies, that's dealt with in different ways, and it's just a really big issue that I can see like time and time again, specifically in a lot of countries that I hang out in, like Serbia and Thailand, can be like a real like sort of well, okay, the gender and sexual orientation stuff is not really as big a deal here in Thailand because they have a traditional culture that accommodates that sort of stuff. But in Serbia, definitely, there's marches against the Pride March every year.
Wow.
And it's really contentious because people feel it's an affront to their traditional culture and religion and stuff like that. How much should we like how? And you know, there's all these Western NGOs that are coming in to aid and promote the Pride March, which literally means that when this thing happens, you have to have, I don't know, 12 police officers on the street for every marcher because the hooligans are going to come and the religious people are going to come and all this sort of stuff. It's just like, what? And this is not just a digital nomad problem, but the digital nomads would clearly be more on the side of freedom for the minorities, sexual minorities and stuff like that, versus for like, oh, if this is the traditional thing in the society, then they should cancel the parade. No guy like you or me would actually say that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But how much do we actually have to, as we started this video talking about nudity, how much do we have to respect? You know, would going into a country, if the majority is like Orthodox Christian and the majority polls on the street were showing that the majority thinks that the parade should not happen, should we as guests in the country say like, well, then maybe it shouldn't happen? Or should we actually support our Western values? This is a really charged example, I think.
I think so. The way that I look at it, so digital nomadism, I feel is all about finding a place and living in a place that you want to be in, a place that resonates with you, with your values and with your goals and your lifestyle. So I think it comes down to that element of choice again. Like if you don't necessarily need to go and you don't need to go to a country and live in a country that you don't accept the traditional values. If you don't accept the traditional values of a country or a place, maybe that's not the place for you.
But wait, there's a diversity of different values in every country. It's usually on a sort of class divide and a rural versus urban divide. In Serbia, it's definitely, my friends in Belgrade are very open-minded to a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, whereas the people who live outside of the city in the more traditional rural communities where people have more traditional values, these countries are fragmented within themselves.
Totally.
Specifically, Serbia is the example I can give. And so when I moved to Serbia, I associate with the people who resonate with my values, people who want to live an international life, speak English, and it's awesome. But you can't avoid the other people. So it's not like there's one thing. There's a spectrum, man.
But I guess you just surround yourself with the people that you want to be around, and Yeah, you can criticize how, you know, maybe the majority are not accepting of different kind of sexual orientations. Cool. You can maybe even protest if you feel you want to kind of take some kind of action or make your voice heard. But at the end of the day, you need to kind of respect how things are done there, and it may not necessarily, you know, if it starts to impact your life, then you may kind of want to look into maybe going somewhere else or whatever. But yeah, it's a very tough.
Again a practice of tolerance.
Yeah,
it's
tolerance,
a practice
man.
of just like making the community of people around you who share your values and who you can truly live with in a sort of close way, and then tolerating the people who are around in the same spaces as you who think differently. I think, and understanding why they think differently as much as you can, understanding like maybe the years of history that made them nationalistic or whatever, and understanding that these cultures represent what's worked for them in their history and stuff like that, and they will continue to evolve and modernize in certain ways, but you can't force it on other people. I think that's what it comes down to. And you should try to be a bridge of cultures in being respectful towards whatever the thing is, where you're at, with the people that you're at, as much as possible, and just tune on an individual, day-to-day basis. Where are you? What are the people's values? How can you accommodate and understand them? And that's, I think, all we can do as guests.
Like even with each other, like you don't need to agree with everything that's been said to you. You don't necessarily have to convince them to think the way that you do. You just need to kind of accept it, and kind of hopefully you can both continue interacting with each other despite your differences, and look at your similarities. We have so much more in common than we have that's different.
And the sort of thing that I find most toxic to this sort of effort of understanding other people and being able to see what you agree on is ideology. You know, like if you have like a sort of like vegan ideology, which means that you believe all meat eaters are evil people, murderers, then chances are your interactions with people who don't fit your ideology may be harmed by that and stuff like that. And so try not to be too ideological when you go into these other countries, because you're going to see stuff that you don't like. Like, I really don't like the way that they treat dogs in Mexico. They treat them like completely different than in Canada, where I come from. They treat dogs there, or in Europe or whatever. And it's kind of appalling, but I have to accept it.
How do they treat them in
well, they'll just leave them on outside the whole time. They'll let them shit everywhere, and the dogs are barking the whole time, which is a sign that they've got aggression and stuff like that, and they're not treated as members of the family like they are in our cultures. And basically it's appalling. But you know, I lived in Tulum, Mexico a couple of years ago for 2 months, and there were literally like stray dogs on the street, a dog across the street, 3 little dogs in the house behind my house, barking all the time. And without even the moral thing, it was literal noise pollution that for the first few days like cost me a lot of sleep. But in the end, I had to just sort of like tune it out and say, this is where I'm at, this is their neighborhood, I'm the only gringo on the block, let's just deal with this, you know? And so it just
you get used to it after a while.
You get used to it. So
which is maybe a bad thing as well, because we can get used to some pretty appalling circumstances. That's the funny thing about human adaptability. It can be used for good and for bad. Or, you know, I don't want to moralize. You know,
there's this phrase like TIT, this is Thailand. And people just like, expats who have been here for a while, just like, but this is Thailand. Chill out, man.
Tit.
Yeah. So just think about that when you're doing it. There's no, again, as with the economic impact that we digital nomads have, there's no easy answer to these questions, and we're navigating, and the impact of us as our numbers grow is growing. So just watch it, folks, and contribute and understand to where you are, however you can, whenever you can. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and we'll catch you later.